Have you ever stood at a dock and watched a cruise ship pull out of port? Not a photo, not a video. Actually stood there, looked up, and felt your brain quietly refuse to accept what your eyes were showing you. Because here is what you are actually looking at. The Symphony of the Seas, one of the largest cruise ships ever built, weighs around 900,000 metric tons when fully loaded. It carries over 9,000 people. It has an ice skating rink, a zip line, and a park with real trees inside it. And it does not just float, it glides across open ocean through 40-foot waves without flinching. By every instinct you have, that thing should be on the bottom of the ocean. But today, we are breaking down exactly why it is not. And after this video, you will never look at a floating object the same way again. Let us start with the scale, because you need to feel it before you can understand it. 900,000 metric tons. That number does not mean much on its own. So think about it this way. The Symphony of the Seas weighs roughly the same as 6,500 fully loaded Boeing 747s. All of them, stacked together. That is the amount of mass sitting on the surface of the water right now, somewhere in the Caribbean. And it is not just the ship itself, it is the fuel, the food to feed 9,000 people for a week. The steel hull alone, just the outer shell, contains enough metal to build around 40,000 family cars. Every single day, that ship burns through around 1,000 metric tons of fuel. It carries its own power grid, its own water treatment system, its own hospital. So the question is not just how does it float? The question is how does anything that heavy, not immediately, violently, disappear beneath the surface? Here is where common sense leads you completely in the wrong direction. Most people assume a ship floats because it is somehow light enough. Like the engineers found a way to make the steel less heavy. That is not what is happening. A solid block of steel the size of a small bedroom would hit the water and sink without hesitation. Drop a steel bolt into a glass of water. It is gone before you blink. So how is a ship made of millions of those same steel bolts sitting calmly on the surface? The answer has nothing to do with the weight of the material. It has everything to do with the shape. Here is the physical reality. When you push an object into water, the water pushes back. Not because it is stubborn, but because you are physically displacing it. You are forcing water out of the space your object now occupies. That displaced water, the volume of ocean you just shoved aside, pushes upward with a force equal to its own weight. This is called buoyancy. It is the entire reason the ship exists on the surface instead of the seabed. The hull of a cruise ship is not a solid block of steel. It is a hollow shell, a carefully engineered cavity. When that hull sits in the water, it does not just displace the steel in the walls. It displaces the entire volume of water that would otherwise fill that space. The corridors, the cabins, the restaurants, the ice rink, all of it. That volume of displaced ocean is enormous. The upward force it generates matches, almost perfectly, the downward weight of the entire ship. When those two forces reach equilibrium, the ship stops sinking. Not because it ran out of weight to pull it down, but because it ran out of depth to sink to. The ocean pushes back just as hard as gravity pulls down. The ship sits exactly at that balance point, and we call that the waterline. That hull shape is not accidental. Naval architects at shipyards in Turku, Finland, and Papenburg, Germany, spend years designing the exact geometry of a cruise ship's bottom. The hull is wide, curved, and deep. It is designed to maximize the volume of water displaced while keeping the overall structure strong enough to survive open ocean swells. The steel plates forming that hull are welded together in massive prefabricated sections, sometimes as large as a suburban house, then assembled in dry dock like an enormous three-dimensional puzzle.
You can actually see this working in real time. As the ship loads more passengers, more fuel, more cargo, it sinks slightly lower. The hull displaces more water. The upward force increases to match the new weight. The ship finds a new balance. Naval architects calculate this with such precision that they can predict the waterline within centimeters before a single person boards. But floating is only half the problem. A hull that floats is useless if it rolls onto its side the moment a wave hits it. This is where the shape of the ship does something extraordinary. A cruise ship's hull is extraordinarily wide relative to its height. That wide, flat base creates something called a large righting moment. Think of it like a weighted punching bag. Push it, it swings. But when you let go, it swings straight back. The weight is too low and the base is too wide for it to stay tipped. Cruise ships are designed so that the heaviest systems, the engines, the fuel tanks, the ballast water, sit as low in the hull as possible. The center of gravity stays deep in the ship, well below the waterline. Meanwhile, the center of buoyancy, the point where all that upward water pressure is focused, sits higher. The moment the ship begins to tilt, those two forces create a powerful rotational force that pushes it back upright. That is why a 900,000-ton ship can sail through a North Atlantic storm, and the passengers inside barely spill their coffee. So the next time you stand on a dock and watch one of these things move, know that you are not looking at an exception to the laws of physics. You are looking at those laws being used with extraordinary precision. Every weld in that hull, every decision about where to place the engines, every centimeter of that waterline, it all exists because engineers understood exactly how water pushes back. It is not defying nature. It is reading it perfectly. And now I am curious, if a 900,000-ton ship can float, how does something that massive actually stop? Because a vessel that size, moving at full speed, has no brakes. So what actually happens when it needs to dock? That is a story worth telling, so subscribe so you do not miss it next time.